Jason goes back to basics with a brand new release. Here's your look at the NECA Toys Friday the 13th Part 2 reissue Jason Voorhees. Mrs. Voorhees is dead and Camp Crystal Lake is shut down, but a camp next to the infamous lake is being stalked by an unknown assailant. Figure comes included with machete, pitchfork, pickaxe, knife, spear, campfire, Pamela head, and interchangeable Jason heads. Just before a new bunch of teens find themselves getting sacked, we're going to go ahead and have a look at the reissue Jason Voorhees. Now, reissue doesn't always necessarily mean that reissuing is retooling a figure, not the case like the 2018 Michael Myers that had a brand new head sculpt. Sometimes reissues simply just mean paint tweaks, good or bad. Recently, we just had a look at the Nightmare on Elm Street Freddy Krueger from the Dream Warriors, and that was a case where maybe the reissue wasn't as good as the original. Well, we'll certainly see here if the reissue Jason Voorhees from Part 2 is better, or perhaps even worse, than the one we got before. By the way, FYI, if you guys are interested to pick this one up for yourself, I did actually find this one over on Entertainment Earth's website. My new thing, consider it more an obsession than anything else, is I like to go over to their website and see the hot off the truck option up the top corner. If there's something hot off the truck that's a NECA release, I usually will get on board picking it up, especially if I have a figure that's already been a couple of years old, because I know they're going to be getting a new stocked item. That being said, boy, I made that short story long, I guess, in that case. Let's go ahead and grab the tape measure just to see how tall Jason Voorhees stands. In this case, Sackhead Jason is about 7.5 inches in height, or the figure is going to be about 18.5 centimeters tall. Try not to get myself too confused here. Well, here's what Jason Voorhees, the reissue here in the middle, looks like with the Jason Voorhees that we got from, I believe, 2018. And I'm also going to bring in the product codes, the lot numbers for both those figures so you guys can see what lot numbers represent each figure. But you can see there are some tweaks that have been made, more visual, more cosmetic than anything else. There's no retooling in this case. But we're going to again talk about the differences between the two figures, something certainly I won't be confused by. Here's what the figures look like with the reissue Part 3 Jason Voorhees. Now again, there's been several reissues over the line. I'm not going to probably get every single time a reissue comes out, because half the time if I'm ordering these things online, I don't always know the lot numbers that are going to be associated with those figure releases. If you had already, though, picked up this Jason Voorhees, then all of the accessories that we're going to cover off in this review are basically the same. Again, just changing only just the paint in some of the cases. Better or worse, we'll certainly see for ourselves. First thing we'll have a look at, though, is the campfire. Let's pick that up right now. Now, the campfire in this case isn't yet lit, as there's certainly a flame attachment that's going to clip onto this. The always clipping onto this is the hardest thing to do. You always have to line things up and get them just in the right place to get that campfire a-burning. One thing just to remove the flame for right now to see what the rubble looks like, or the rocks, of course, fill out the circle. The actual, I guess what you would call it, the logs, the cut up wood, certainly looks like it's attached to the inside of it. It looks like it's been pegged in place. But just to bring in the other one that we got before, here's what the original 2018 one looked like. So again, you can see the differences between the two. I do like the color of the rocks a lot more now with the reissue. The grays look a lot more like grays. The rocks look a lot more like rocks. The rocks before looked fine. In fact, one thing they did actually nicely do here in the original rocks was that they also brushed on a more lighter color of gray on it as well. I prefer, though, the darker gray myself. You can see also as well the wood placed inside. Looks like it's marginally lighter here as well. This also looks like the way that they painted this looks like the fire has been put out, as it looks like the embers are still lit up and still lighting up the rocks on the inside. This actually looks like it's been cold for a while. Just to again show you guys the differences between the two. They're not much different, although again, I like this one a little bit more than this one. Again, if you like the look of this one just being recently put out, this one I think looks the better part of that. This one looks like it's kind of been colder for a longer period of time. Flames, by the way, also, just to pick up the flame, this is the one that came included the 2018 release. This is the one that's coming with the newer release. A lot more oranges happening here, more the darker reds when we got before, and it looks also as well like the yellows are a little bit more vibrant with the newer release than what we got before. A little bit more clear yellow. Clear yellow, does that even make sense? I think it does. But there's a lot more yellows, certainly what I'm trying to say here on the newer Fire. Like the newer Fire a lot more. But those to the side, I'm going to do my best again, try not to confuse the two things together. The figure also comes included with a knife. Let's go ahead and pick that up right now. The knife itself does have a nice little bird edge to it. It does have more lighter silver on the bottom, darker silver here to the top. Rivets painted nicely there in the silver of the handle, and the handle itself, though a little on the more thicker side, does replicate nicely the look of a knife. Just going to reach off to the side here, making sure, again, I got everything in order. Here's what the original knife looked like. Now, there's a lot more silver here happening on the newer blade than the older blade. There's a lot more, I guess, transitioning of colors where you've got more of a medium silver being added in it. The blade looks a little bit more consistent, I think, on this side. Although this knife does look nice because it looks like it's been recently sharpened. Speaking of sharpening, though, it's not sharp to the touch, so you're not going to be drawing blood to it. Handles are also seem to be a little bit more clear, a little more defined on the original knife than what we get with the newer knife. But again, differences are very, very minuscule here. The figure also comes included with a pickaxe. Unfortunately, I don't have the other pickaxe. Wouldn't you know it? The other pickaxe I went to put back in the package, and instead what I end up doing, have you ever done this for yourself? You go to put something away like an accessory, and then you think, okay, I'll just put it on the shelf for right now, and I'll get back to it. Well, ultimately, I did get back to it, and I don't know where I put that pickaxe. I think initially, even I called it something different in its original review, so we kind of rectify things right now. The pickaxe here, while not having one to compare along with it, I'm going to spin this around so you can see it has been used. There's some blood nicely applied to the end of the pick. The other pick seems still clean, and there's some nice blood splattered there along the handle there as well. Don't unfortunately have the comparison for this. What I do, though, have a comparison for is the pitchfork. The pitchfork, again, just to bring the other one in for a second here. The pitchforks don't seem that much different. The only thing I can really notice between the two is that the original 2018 release would have had, and again, I'm only using 2018 just because of the way the boxes are printed. This one does have a little more of a browner color to the handle, whereas this one kind of has more of a grayish brown. I don't know if you can actually even see it by me holding this up to the camera. Can you see a difference between the handles? This one's a little bit more brown. This one's a little less brown. Very minuscule, I know. But that's aside. The figure also comes included with a machete. A little bit different of a machete this time around. This one does have more of a curved blade than the more traditionally straight machete. Still, though, blood has been very much saturated, splashed across the blade there. You got some additional scratching of a lighter silver added in there as well, just to bring in the other machete. Now, the one thing I did notice about the original machete, I'm just going to bring this in right now. On mine, at least, and I can't speak for everybody's, there was a lot more like splotchiness of silver. So I can know right away the difference in between the two machetes. Can you see them? You probably can see the difference. I'm sure you can see the difference. See, this one's a little bit more splotch here on the silver. The blood also seems to be about placed in the same. There's a little bit more of the blood down below here, but like the pattern of the blood is about the same between the two. This one looks like it's got actually a couple layers of blood where it's dried and then it's been applied again. This one looks like it's just been freshly soaked and stained in blood. They're flipping around so you can see it on the other side there as well. So in this case, actually, and also the newer one also has a little bit more. Mileage may, of course, vary. I'm only discussing the one that I'm looking at in this review. Your machete, obviously, is going to look a little bit different. My machete also, one thing also to mention about this one, is at the end of the handle, I don't know what happened to the end of the handle, but it came loose. And its whereabouts right now, maybe like the pickaxe, remain unknown. So at least I got this one for right now. And then finally, the figure, before we get to these extra floating heads, not so much floating, they're rolling around, figure also comes included with a spear. And again, just to bring in the spear, it's very similar to the pitchfork in the sense that the spear seems a little bit more browner on the original release and a little bit more muted of a brown on the newer release. The points on the end, if you get the point, is nicely painted in silver. The colors seem to be the same on both, but it's really just the color of the brown that's really the difference between the two. Okay, I think I've kept everything in order nicely enough. Let's then move on to the heads that come included with Jason. I guess the biggest one, the more important one, the figure comes included with the severed head of Pamela Voorhees. You can see there's a few little things remaining down below on the bottom of her neck. Not a clean cut at all, even though her hands were able still to grab her head. That was always a funny thing. Just to bring in the original Pamela Voorhees so you can see the difference between the two. There's a lot more of a softer pink happening here for the face. I don't know if Jason's been applying rouge to Pamela's face, kind of keeping her pretty. I think he's going to have to apply a lot more makeup than just that. But the face also seems a little bit more of a softer peach color than the more rougher looking paint. Now, you could say, obviously, if it's a head of a corpse, there would want to be some decay. Maybe you might even say that the look of this one being a little bit more raisin-like might suit the profile of what's left there, at least, of Pamela Voorhees. But I kind of like the lighter color, honestly. The hair also seems handled a little bit lighter as well. A little bit more of a lighter silver is added in there also, and you can see the way that they cut the bottom was rather interesting. And I don't know if it's just the way that mine ended up turning out, that I've got a lot more sticking out at the bottom than the original release. Isn't that rather interesting? Then, of course, the other thing that figure comes included with it is a swapped out head sculpt if you want to prefer your Jason unmasked, like you would certainly see at the end of the movie, played by a completely different actor altogether. The head sculpt here, as you can see, we're going to pair it with the original one. I see a very noticeable difference myself. A lot more splotchier paint happening on the original release. You can kind of see the coloring of what would have been plastic underneath, and then they literally just gooped the paint over top of it. Goop's not probably the best way to describe it, but I think the paint's handled a lot nicer. It's not still the best, but I think it's better, at least on this release, than what we get with this one here. The hair also, you can see as well, is a little bit more of a lighter color here. The locks are a lot lighter than the more darker brown that he gets on the original release. The beard is about the only thing I wish that could have had like the original one. The beard, as you can see, is a lot more obvious here. The beard on this one is only more just suggested than anything else. I think like the skin tone is better on this one, but I think I like the hair and the beard handled better on the original release. And of course, you can swap this head sculpt off to swap it out with then the sack head that we're about to now have a look at. Picking up now Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th Part 2. Very much heavily influenced from the town that dreaded sundown, I believe. Of course, you had a sacked killer there as well. Jason Voorhees, as you can see, is only seeing from the one side of his face. The other eye is completely blocked off here. And to, again, bring in Jason Voorhees to compare the two, the one thing I would say about the original one had a much lighter sack. Although you would say, too, as an argument, Jason Voorhees would likely have been wearing the sack for a while. It would have gotten dirty. It would have gotten grimy. It would probably have made then more sense that it would be closer to this color, not as clean and white. There's a lot more stains here, although the stains seem to be in the same spot. One thing I did notice, though, between the two figures is that way they've reflected the light here on the eyeball, it actually always looks like he's looking to the corner. Whereas this eye, he's looking straight at you. The eye is definitely painted a lot better in the newer release. The rope is also a little bit more lighter here in color. The darker color sure does work better, but I think it's painted better here in the newer release. Shirts are also something that gets a little bit more muted, and actually also as well the overalls. The overalls, not coveralls, overalls. The overalls here, as you can see, are more of a lighter coloring of blue, and even like the plaid shirt has a little bit more wear to it, so it doesn't look like a very clean looking shirt. The plaid is a little bit more standout on the original release. And again, the colors are pulled back just a little bit more here and softer on the newer release. But I do like the coveralls being a little bit more grimier, looking like they've been worn down here. There's a lot more scuffing here on the front of the pants, the front of the overalls, and also more scuffing here on the legs. That wasn't always the case here when we looked at the original release. Again, like when you're looking at them, it's more preference than anything else. Some would even say it's not even worth picking up another figure if it's essentially just going to be the exact same mold. Spin this around so you can see it from also here the back. A lot more scuffing here on the back of the legs. But for me, at least, I always find like when it comes, for most of the cases at least, that the reissues always get a better, cleaner looking paint. I think when it comes to the two figures, the paint is handled nicer here on the newer release than when we get with the older release before. One thing I also did want to do before we get down to the articulation on Jason Voorhees is also then to bring in the packaging. This is the packaging that would have been for the newer release. This had also been the packaging then for the original release. And yeah, when you're looking at the front covers, they are exactly the same to one another. One thing that you will want to be looking at, though, is the product lot number. I'm just going to move Jason's over out of the way, Jason plural out of the way. And we're going to move this guy out of the way as well. I'm going to bring in then the barcodes here. And just above the barcodes, you'll see the lot production number. Now, the original one we looked at before, and why I kept referencing 2018, the original product lot number was 966N030918. The newer one that I just recently picked up is 966N112321. usually referencing the year in which the lot number was produced. Now again, when you're looking at the packaging doesn't change too much between the two. Even like the back of it seems to be exactly the same as well. So if this is a case where you guys are interested, pick this one up for yourself. Probably not always the easiest thing to get online, and always the reasoning why I always get this guy over on like Entertainment Earth, because as soon as it comes off the lot, hot off the truck, I know I'm going to be getting a new lot number, or basically going to be a new lot number. So again, if you guys are interested, the newer one is 2321. At least the one we looked at before was 0918. I suppose also one thing we could do too, before we get down to the articulation on the new Jason Voorhees here, is to then remove the head. To remove the head, you're just going to hold onto the torso, wiggle the top of the head off, and remove it from the post. Luckily, they are once again using the cylinder post as opposed to the larger ball joints. Then to take your newer head of the unmasked Jason, we can go ahead then and wiggle this and pop it back onto the post. If you're having any issues to pop this back onto the post, you could always use hot water, or you can also use yourself a hairdryer. Although with these cylinder posts, I always find they're a lot easier to get back into place. And that's what the Jason head sculpt now looks like. Just to show you, spin this all the way around so you guys can see it from all the sides. Now, it's a good looking head. The only thing I would have said is I wish like the beard was a little bit more obvious than what we're getting here. For the articulation, though, for the reissue Part 2 Jason Voorhees, the head is on a ball joint or a ball post. So it does rotate back and forth. It does hinge up, does hinge down, and it does rock back and forth. What you're seeing right now is to the extent of what you're actually able to do with this, but at least you get a little bit of posability there. Arms come out the exact same way as the original release, so they're not changing anything there. You have about 90 degrees when it comes to the arms. You take those arms and rotate them, all the way around. The figure does have a single hinge on the elbow, but it allows also the arm to rotate back and forth. Hands also rotate all the way around. The upper torso does have a ball joint, despite for the fact he is actually on a overall. Despite for the fact he does have overalls, he does still have a ball joint underneath that. Kind of funny to see that. The legs do split out. You can bring them out. They're on ratcheted joints, although this one leg, strangely, comes out a lot more than I was comfortable with. You can take the legs and move forward. You can move them back. There's a mild swivel there also on the tops of the thighs, kind of more the way they're just assembled. Single hinge only on the knee. You rotate the leg back and forth this way. And of course, like the feet we looked at before, they hinge up and down. And there's an ankle rocker as well. Did I even show you guys what the feet look like? There's what they look like right there. Peg holes, by the way, on the undersides of the feet. So if you want to use yourself a display stand, you can most definitely use yourself a display stand. But that's what the reissue Jason Voorhees looks like. And then just to bring in the other Jason Voorhees, one of the benefits also of picking up this figure, not only is getting the tweaks on the paint, but also because he does have an alternate head sculpt. For all intents and purposes, you can also display this guy two ways on your shelf. The masked sack way that we saw for the majority of the movie, and then the reveal that he had at the end of the movie when he's crashing through the window glass. Getting a NECA reissue figure does not always guarantee that you're going to be getting a better figure from before. Some would even make the argument watching reviews like this that they're fine and content just to keep the one that they had in their collection before, and it really isn't warranted enough to get another one of these, because there isn't really any retooling that's happening. We're not getting like the 2018 Michael Myers that had a very distinctly different head sculpt. We are getting the same Jason as before, just with a slightly different change of paint. I think in most of the cases here for Jason Voorhees at least, is that the paint is handled better. When we looked at both the coveralls on both the figures, the overalls, and we also looked at the plaid shirt and the alternate head sculpts, I think in most of the cases the reissue does handle it better. There are still things that kind of go back and look at the original figure, like the unmasked head sculpt that we're looking at here in final looks. I do think I like the beard a lot more on the original one. The beard does stand out a lot better on the original head sculpt than what we get right here. It's almost more, again, just suggested. And I think the colors of the hair could have been a little bit darker than what we actually get. Still, though, one of the benefits, as already mentioned in this review, of getting actually two Jasons is the fact that you can actually display them in two different ways. Sackhead Jason sure has an unmasked head sculpt, but a lot of times, too, when you pick up another reissue Jason, keep in mind he does have a hockey mask that can be removed. There's always mileage to be made out of that same existing mold. But to compare the two head sculpts and to compare the two figures, which do you think is a better looking figure? The one that we looked at in this review, or the one that we looked at years ago, the one that was released in 2018? Let me know down below your comments. Also, again, if you guys are interested, pick this one up for yourself. I think it is still available over on Entertainment Earth's website. Or, again, a lot of times what I like to do in these reviews is provide the product lot numbers. So even if you're unable to find this guy online, and obviously the hard thing to get this guy online is that you never really even know the product lot numbers. They could also be just trying to sell off old stock. But if you guys are interested in trying to find this guy in the wild, use then the lot numbers I provide in these reviews to help kind of track down and find the differences of the figures. It's very unlikely, unless you're going to an old store or a store that has old stock, that you're going to be getting those older Jasons, but you never know. The possibilities are always there. But what do you guys think of the reissue Part 2 Jason Voorhees? Is this enough to warrant picking up this figure a second time around? Let me know in the comments below. Also, if you guys enjoyed this video, why not hit with a like? If you're loving the content you guys are seeing and certainly do want to stick around for more, then make sure you hit the subscribe button down below and that you're also turning on the bell notification. We are also going to be looking at the Dream Sequence Jason Voorhees, which I did also pick up the exact same time as this guy, and that one also is a reissue. So we're going to be doing some fun comparisons in that review as well. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.